Join us for the very first IFL Live at London's Indigo at the O2, Sunday, August the 13th, with me, Kugan Cassius, and some very special guests. Eddie Hearn, Darren Barker, Johnny Fisher and more. Tickets now on sale. So in the words of Eddie Hearn...
You get up, you dress up, and you fucking show up.
This is Umar Ahmed for IFLTV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. I'm joined by the Saint, as you can see, Mr. George Groves himself at his very nice residency here in West London. Firstly, George, as your hoodie says, it's got the George Groves Boxing Club podcast. So let's give that a little plug. I'm sure a lot of our viewers subscribe and listen to your stuff with Declan Taylor anyways, but in case they haven't, tell them about it.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, so the George Groves Boxing Club is a podcast. It's out every week. We have a feature episode every Wednesday where we'll get someone from the world of boxing to come on and talk about a topic relating to boxing. So we have a little deep dive into something. So we've had Shane McGuigan on talking about pad work. We've had Neil Sibley on, who's a lawyer, boxing lawyer, talking about contracts. We've had Philip Sharkey on talking about what it's like behind the lens as a boxing photographer. So as well as many, many other fighters. Obviously we've had some big name promoters, Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, waiting on a few more. Some great fighters, past and present, and all things in between as well. So no, we love it. It's coming up to our 1 year anniversary now. I'll do it with Declan Taylor, boxing journalist, and at the moment it's only audio, so we're not infringing on any viewing sort of space. But
any plans to?
Maybe, because I think it's funny. I like listening to podcasts, and I find it much easier to find time in the day to listen to it. But as you know, more so than me, some people like to consume their media via watching a video. So we do video quite a lot of them, and we'll chop them up and put little clips out on social just to get people involved. But it's been great fun. We say, depending on when this goes out, we've got Brandon Scott coming out next week, who's just his episode has been one of my favourite to record. Dex too. So Brandon Scott, if you don't know him quite yet, he's the guy who shows up at press conferences and fun runs in his Spider-Man or Forrest Gump. Great talker, really interesting guy, but with a great attitude. Might be one to watch coming out of Wales on the scene, and he's very proud to have just accomplished his boxing contract that he's got from Eddie Hearn. So it's nice to hear. So I was like, mate, fucking no, you don't be celebrating that. He's lucky. He should be celebrating having your contract, having your name down. So no, lovely lad, and that's the beauty of a podcast, is you get to meet people you otherwise wouldn't get to meet and see and find out a little bit about them. So it's a fun podcast, nothing too serious, but yeah, so far so good.
Go and check it out. Right, in terms of sort of topical news, Carl Froch has actually been dominating the headlines. Obviously your former rival, talking about Anthony Joshua. He's been very outspoken about him. Have you seen the comments Carl was made? And I saw Joshua had a little dig at Froch's nose as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it all. I've seen bits and pieces, so I probably need to. I wanted to hear the whole Joshua sort of segment to find out what he said. Is he actually really having a dig, or is it just a little bit taken out of context? But
well, I can tell you what he said.
Yeah.
So this was Joshua. Said Rob McCracken's a really good coach. The only thing I'll say though is look at Carl Froch's nose. He, as in McCracken, didn't teach me defence, and in heavyweight boxing, the level of competition I was facing at the stage of my career, I was getting hit with too many clean shots. That's what Joshua said.
Yeah, well, he's working with new coaches now, and maybe new coaches are sort of saying that to him. Maybe he's worked with a bunch of different coaches and they've all said that to him. Maybe that responsibility lied with Rob McCracken. Maybe some of the responsibility lies at the fighter's feet. Carl's always going to defend his trainer. I think he's got a good relationship with Rob McCracken. They worked together throughout his whole career, and you know, you ain't got. I'll be a hypocrite if you don't go. If you go through my archive, you'll see me pulling apart Carl Froch's defence, and then so that'd be that. But he works for the GB guys now, Rob McCracken, doesn't he? So he inherits good fighters, very, very good fighters, but he has to refine them to a certain degree and get them to medal and win at championships. So, you know, I haven't done enough training with Rob McCracken to know if he's a good coach or not, to be honest. There's always that age-old argument about, you know, would a good fighter be a good fighter if he wasn't with this coach? You know, ultimately you need good coaches to work with good fighters to get guys to the top level. You can't polish a turd, was a phrase that was thrown around a little bit when I first turned pro. Luckily, never about me. But I think, yeah, the most talented trainers can't always get it out of all fighters. But also, super talented fighters can go wrong with the wrong coach. I think just because Joshua had success whilst working with Rob McCracken don't mean it couldn't have been better. At the same time, if he'd gone and worked with someone else, maybe it could have been worse. At times he's had more than one trainer in the corner, more than one trainer, and I don't really understand how that can be beneficial. But if he is essentially working with Rob McCracken at GB, they have a stable of coaches up there who work with all different fighters. But it's all very sort of generic, I'd imagine. It was when I was there. Nothing too specific, and you either follow the sort of the training game plan of the main coach, or they don't really do technically that much stuff anyway, because you can't spend 2 weeks drilling the jab with one coach in a particular way, and then you just move on to the next one. He's like, nah, do it this way. It doesn't work like that. So I think you'll learn. You learn a lot working with different coaches. Like, it's how it is. Even if you work out what not to do through working with bad coaches, it might serve him well now to have sort of broadened his horizons, working with different coaches and being alongside elite level pro fighters. I think that's something that he might, if I was Joshua, I would be noticing now, the difference between hanging out with amateurs and hanging out with seasoned pros. It is night and day, like night and day.
Do you think Carl's criticism of Anthony Joshua is justified, or do you think he's being overcritical of Anthony?
But I think he's defending his coach. Like, he's defending Rob McCracken. That's what he's doing.
He insists it's not that, actually, Carl. He said it's nothing to do with AJ leaving Rob. It's just my honest views on Joshua. He insists that it's not to do with the relationship he has with Rob.
That
he's making these comments about AJ. He said it's not because he's left Rob and I'm close with Rob. It's got nothing to do with it. That's what Carl says.
But the comments that he said is that he did fine with Rob. Yeah.
Yeah, he said it's good that if he wants to go and seek a new trainer, but he's saying he's being critical of Joshua because of his performances, where he's at in his career, and it's nothing really to do with the relationship.
Well, if he's
with Rob.
being critical of Joshua's career, then yeah, I know Carl. That's what Carl does. That's fine. And if he has been critical, then I'm sure that Carl shoots on the hip. He doesn't. He's not worried about making something sound nicer if he doesn't need to. And Joshua, it was, Joshua's that fighter where, he had an unbelievable amount of success. Yeah. Well, there is that element with Joshua. Like, he had an awful lot of success, loads and loads of success. Obviously, comes straight out of the Olympics, and he's on the road. Like, he's on his way. But everyone's trying to do their utmost to orchestrate a straightforward career for him. So by the time he gets to the top, every time if a mistake is made, they say, "Oh well, he's still only had a handful of pro fights, or he's only had a handful of amateur fights, he's moved really quickly. So you can't really have that as sort of a fall back on. You know, something to fall back on. You got to be in it. So
Do you think he beats Dylan Whyte?
yeah, he should beat Dylan Whyte. He's beat him before. Should beat him again. Dylan Whyte's not in great form as such, is he? You know, like he had a hard fight against Tyson, which, you know, after waiting years and years for a world title shot, he gets one. I think the occasion got to him. He didn't box that well, and he gets stopped. And then since then, he's boxed Franklin, didn't box that well either. Some say he was sort of lucky to get the nod. So it's not great form to be going into the Joshua fight. So I think Joshua beats him. I think at this point Joshua's probably a little bit more fresh, and beats him.
A couple of weeks after Joshua Whyte to get a huge fight in Poland with Oleksandr Usyk defending his unified world titles against Daniel Dubois. Now you asked the general public, and really I'd say 99% of people are backing Usyk comfortably in this fight. How much of a chance do you give Daniel, and if you do, why do you do?
Not a big chance. He's got a puncher's chance. I mean, he must be able to whack. I think he's probably one of the hardest punching heavyweights out there from what we've seen and what you gather. But he's got to land on Usyk. I don't see how he can do that. He's moved away from Shane McGuigan. He's working with Don Charles, who's a good coach, worked with Chisora and many others. But that's a new relationship that you've got to try and form, and I think this is their first fight together. Dubois had a knee injury in his last fight that he's had to come over, and a bit of a sticky spell in that fight too, where like he was in trouble. Got a knockout win, great for him. But
What would you be telling Daniel if he was leading his corner?
You got to hurt him. Like, you got to hurt him. So you got. I mean, tight guard. I don't think you can match him for speed. Usyk, his feet are really quick. Daniel's got a land tank on him. So I mean, tight. Try and press him down. Be cautious. Don't worry about trying to gas out. Try and whack him downstairs rather than trying to piece something to the head. Try and whack him downstairs. If you do land something on him, then go for it. If he looks like you momentarily stunned, then go for it. Because you might not get that opportunity again. He's a highly skilled fighter, Usyk. He's the most skillful heavyweight there is in the heavyweight division that I've seen. Most likely because he's not a huge heavyweight, so he has, he can still move his frame about. He come from the Ukrainian amateur boxing scene where they're well schooled, working with Lomachenko, who must be a phenomenal coach. So yeah, I think he's the best heavyweight in the world right now, and I think Dubois got it all to do, but always gonna have that puncher's chance. He's gonna have a lot of natural size on his side. But I make Usyk a massive favourite.
Interesting comment you just made there, saying that Usyk's the best in the world. Many would argue that Tyson Fury still is. Why do you put him above Tyson?
I think he beats Tyson. He's a better boxer than Tyson. I think sharper with the feet. He hasn't really ever come unstuck, Usyk, not since he's been up at heavyweight. And I think he's been getting better and better, He had that round against Joshua where he got caught and it looked like, but it just shows he's got a good chin. I don't think he's a totally different fighter than Fury's fought for the last few years. So I think he's fresh. I think he's in form. And Fury hasn't boxed really that much lately, has he? It seems like, and he's hinting at retirement, and then he's not, and now he's got an exhibition fight. So different mentality, and I think maybe Fury doesn't quite fancy this Usyk fight. I think that's why this fight hasn't been made. I mean, Usyk has always travelled, always had to go to someone else's backyard, has been paid an awful lot of money at times. fighter. Like he's just almost he's been programmed to do what he's told. And then the reason that fight has been made, I'd imagine, is part of Fury that thinks, I don't really need to fight this little guy right now until I've seen something in him, some sort of chink in his armour. I'll just happily just tell everyone I'm the #1 in the world and leave it at that.
What do you think about him fighting Ngannou? Good or bad for the sport?
Not fussed really. I mean, it's Ngannou. I watched a highlight reel of him in the cage, and he knocks a lot of people out with like punches. But his punches ain't bad. Obviously, he's a big solid guy, but there's no like, it's not from a boxing stance, you know. So it'd be hard for him to land them shots on Fury, and the guys he's ironing out. They're in horrific positions. You know, like as in, they don't ride a shot. They just take everything full force with the tiny MMA gloves. So I don't see it being a problem for Fury, like, at all. It's interesting enough because it's sort of a crossover thing, and I think it might be pretty good. You know, there's a lot of UFC fans out there. It feels like that might now decide to follow a bit more boxing. And likewise, maybe some boxing fans who might now venture into UFC. But so I think it's okay for the sport. I think it's fine. It's not for the WBC belt. I think if that was the case, that would be a little bit like, oh, has he got shot, this guy? But other than that, it's okay. Interesting enough. Is it over? Is it they're 3-minute boxing rounds in a boxing ring? Is it 12 rounds they can do?
I haven't heard about the rounds, but you know, people trying to sell the fight are insistent it's not an exhibition. There's going to be 3 judges at ringside, and it's a proper fight. And Tyson's come out and said on Channel 5 there was a card on Friday, and he was there, and he said, you know, I'm coming out to knock him out in the first round. I'm taking this seriously. So it's not an exhibition.
Yeah.
So really, you'd probably expect Ngannou to get ironed out quick.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing it if it was an exhibition where it's not in a boxing ring. Then something else. Let them fight in a cage with little mitts on. Just do a round of boxing. Then if he survives, like, I don't know, 2 rounds of boxing, then the last round they can have a little wrestle. You know, that's much more interesting. It must be hard to pin Fury. Look at the size of him. He's enormous. So, yeah. But yeah, it's interesting enough. I'm up for it. I'll watch it. Like,
yeah, a lot of people seem to lost their minds over it. I'm not sure if you've seen the social media reaction to it, but
yeah. Well, is that fascination? Like, and what if this guy is a monster puncher? Like,
well, what I was saying is people have gone the other way and said it's just they won't watch. It's a complete joke. Like, a lot of people have reacted negatively towards it.
Yeah. But that's what people like to do, don't they?
Just lastly, before I let you go, George, obviously a massive fight in Las Vegas this Saturday night. I'm sure you'll be either staying up for it or watching it on record on Sunday morning between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Are you split like many people on this?
Yeah, I am split. Everyone I speak to sort of goes Crawford, and it's one of them ones where I feel like I'd love to know the guys a little bit better, a little bit more personally, to know who are they, what are they all about, what does this fight really mean to them, and then maybe you might have a bit more of a clear idea on who could win. But I'll probably still say Crawford. There's nothing spectacular in the build-up. There's spelled alarm bells for me for either fighter. So Spence obviously hasn't boxed quite as much, so maybe a bit more momentum with Crawford. But
yeah, and had the car crash as well, Spence, didn't he?
Yeah, which feels like forever ago now, doesn't it? So, but right, either man off at your peril, really, isn't it? So that's the thing. I'm really happy the fight's happening. I think it's an amazing fight. The division's great. So I wouldn't want to pick a winner with any real conviction, but for me right now, I think probably Crawford.
Listen, George Groves, thank you very much for your time. Like I said at the start, go and check George's podcast out with Declan Taylor. Yeah, give that a check, and appreciate your time on IFLTV, and we'll catch up soon, George.
Lovely. Cheers, man.
Join us for the very first IFL Live at London's Indigo at the O2, Sunday, August the 13th, with me, Kugan Cassius, and some very special guests. Eddie Hearn, Darren Barker, Johnny Fisher and more. Tickets now on sale. So in the words of Eddie Hearn,
You get up, you dress up, and you fucking show up.